Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the first webinar of 2019 hosted by InMobi. My name is Rajesh Pantina, and I head marketing for India at InMobi. Now, as we go ahead about today's webinar, we regularly host a series of events, meetups, webinars across the globe to share best practices and learnings. And in today's webinar, titled "The Changing Face of the Indian Mobile User," I'm joined by Vasta Agarwal, VP and General Manager, India and South Asia at InMobi. Now, what will be the agenda for today? So, India is inching closer to becoming a $1 trillion digital economy with rapidly expanding digital infrastructure and greater accessibility to technology. With 90% of India set to own a mobile phone by 2022, it comes as no surprise that mobile is the primary driver of this transformation. Now, the face of the Indian mobile user is changing, and how? Bharat, comprising of Tier 2, Tier 3, and rural India, is bringing an ever increasing number of first time internet users online. And in addition, mobile adoption is growing across all demographics. Indian consumers are moving far away from traditional means of content to more convenient one to one interactions enabled by the mobile. And be it gaming, video viewing, or shopping, mobile is now the primary screen for users. So, for the marketer, which is you, therefore, it becomes extremely crucial to gauge the depths and dynamics of the Indian mobile user. Today's webinar will run you through the evolving Indian mobile user, give you an overview of the 2019 mobile advertising industry, take you through some of the key challenges and the top 5 trends to look out for mobile marketing in India in 2019. Now, as a quick introduction, Imobi is a global provider of enterprise platforms for marketers where we help advertisers through ad tech and martech solutions that they can leverage to achieve their marketing objectives. And as a leading technology company, InMobi has been recognized as a 2018 CNBC Disruptor 50 company globally, a uh, fast company, most innovative company across the globe, and also a 50 disruptive company in the MIT Technology Review. We are also a part of the Interactive Advertising Bureau and the Mobile Marketing Association globally and across regions such as APAC and India. Now, I would like to introduce the speaker for today. Vasta Agarwal is the VP and General Manager for India and South Asia business at InMobi and manages the P&L, revenue, strategic partnerships, and business functions for these markets. She's been with InMobi for over 7 years and has worn many hats in her time here, from founder strategy to product manager to business roles. Over to you, Vasta.
Thanks, Rajesh. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have an interesting topic at hand today, so I will, dive straight into that. We will be dividing the webinar into four sections. The first one will cover the evolving Indian mobile user, and we'll talk about the trends in the mobile space. The second section will talk about the advertising industry overview, both digital and traditional, and how that compares. The last two sections will give you a more forward looking view into the 2019 challenges when it comes to mobile marketing and also the mobile marketing trends to watch out for in India. So, with that, let's kickstart this. So, you will see a poll on your screens, and you will have an opportunity to answer this through your window. So, as a marketeer, what would best describe your roles and responsibilities? You would see a multiple choice question on the screen with five options. So, please fill in your answers through the tool on your screen. So I'm sure all of you can see the poll results, and this is some of the answers that we got. So great to see a good mix across roles with people across branding, growth marketing, media planning, consumer insights, and data management. So great to have people from different areas join, and we hope that this webinar will be helpful for all of you on all of these fronts, or at least some of them for sure. So we'll start with the first section, the evolving Indian mobile user. If you look at the last 5 years and do a comparison of 2013 to 2018, you will see a change in many trends across the different dimensions on mobile. One is the change in the demographics. So you will see that the demographic on mobile now is also far older, which is almost 54% of the people are over the age of 25, vis-a-vis just 40% in 2013. Similarly, the mix by locations has changed significantly, whereas it used to be just 29% in 2013, and now almost 40 to 50% people on mobile are from the rural and semi-urban areas. Similarly, we see a gender balance improvement when it comes to the mobile user, that vis-a-vis 2.6 to 1 kind of a ratio in 2013, we actually see a ratio of 1.9 men to for every woman, especially in the age group of 18 to 24 years. So the gender diversity when it comes to the mobile user is improving. And the smartphone user base, whereas it was only about 6.2% of the population 5 years back, has almost increased to 24% in 2018. So you can see that the mix is significantly changing when it comes to the digital user. And this is being led largely by mobile, right? And if you see some of these stats, they're staggering. By 2025, 60% of India's population will have smartphones and fast and reliable data connectivity, with the consumption at an amazing 18 GB per internet user, which is a number we could not have imagined before the 4G revolution. So these numbers are to give you an indication of really how the face of the smartphone user and smartphone market in the country has evolved over the last 5 years. What we do see is that in the coming year, the mobile story will be led by some very interesting trends, and we will deep dive into some of those trends now. Bharat will be the new face of mobile India, meaning the penetration in tier 3 markets and rural markets is what will lead the charge. Gaming will become a big thing on mobile, and which is a very interesting phenomena to watch out for. With OTT, smartphones will actually become, if not already, the preferred mode for video viewing. And mobile is redefining commerce as well. So we've all heard of e-commerce, but mobile will actually become a big channel for e-commerce. So the first one, right, Bharat becoming the new face of mobile India. If you see what we expect in the what we see in the last couple of years is that the rightmost graph, where the total number of mobile internet users has actually jumped by almost 170 million from 306 to 478. But interestingly, out of that 170 million, almost 100 million users have actually been added in rural India. So the rural market is really leading the charge when it comes to mobile internet users. And as a result of that, if you see, the non English language user is actually the one where it is showing enormous growth, right? So if you see between 2011 and 2021, the growth in the English language internet user is actually only 2x, whereas the Hindi language user is actually expected to grow almost 12x. So that's an absolutely crazy number. And if you see, for what we also expect is that for every 10 new internet users who actually come online, 9 of them will be non-English speaking regional vernacular users. So that is reflected in some of the numbers that you are seeing here. Gaming is actually also becoming a very interesting marketing opportunity. So roughly today, or last year, there were about 250 million plus mobile gaming users in India. And what we expect is that in just the next 3 years, that number will actually increase by more than 100 million to almost 370 million. So the pace at which the mobile gaming market is also growing is enormous. And interestingly, the time spent is more than an hour on a daily basis by anyone on a mobile game. So you could say that they're fairly addictive in that way as well, and possibly engaging to see that kind of user time spent on mobile gaming. One thing to keep in mind is that India is a market where almost 92% of these games are actually free to play games, what which basically translates to the fact that a lot of the monetization that would happen for these games would be through in-game in-app advertising. And so this makes it a very interesting opportunity for mobile advertising as well. In this gaming landscape, if you see, there is a higher skew of women. So whereas the average split of users is a 73-27% split, gaming actually has 43% in terms of time spent coming from women, which is very interesting because no one would have ever thought that there are so many women actually who are spending time on these mobile games. Also, the notion somehow tends to be that there would be a lot of younger folks who are spending time on games. But again, if you see the data here, more than 50% of these users are actually in the age group of 25 and above, which means that it is not just young millennials who are spending time on gaming, but an older audience as well. The other trend that we talked about is mobile video. And of course, because of the 4G boom, which happened almost 2 years back now, the kind of time spent on mobile video consumption has gone through the roof, starting to give live TV a run for its money, right? So if you see the graph below, uh, in India, almost 50 minutes a day are spent on mobile video consumption, vis a vis 73 minutes on live TV, and this gap is quickly reducing. If you look at globally, actually, it's higher. The time spent on mobile video is actually higher than the global average time spent. And we actually expect that this will go up to almost 84 minutes in just the next 2 years. So, the rapid pace at which mobile video consumption is increasing is getting very, very close to live TV. The last trend that we talked about in this was the m-commerce bit, which is the kind of time people are spending all across the consumer journey when it comes to mobile shopping is absolutely phenomenal. If you see, 1 in 3 people are actually purchasing on a mobile. The kind of time spent, again, and this is data taken from a survey we did at our end during the festive season last year. Time spent daily on shopping was again in the range of an hour. And people are spending time not just on buying the end product, but comparing prices, finding discounts, researching the product, reading product reviews. So all parts of the consumer journey are actually covered on mobile. And interestingly, you will see that the time spent is not just concentrated in the urban areas, but actually in the rural areas as well. I think the number may not be showing up on the screen, but it's actually 33% as a number here. So the time spent on mobile for mobile shopping is actually very, very well distributed across all geographies. So yeah, so you see the number here, which is 33% in the rural areas. And if you see, this is data that we've actually observed again from the InMobi platform, because we get to see the user over the course of the day. That early mornings and early evenings are very, very lucrative prime times, or shopping moments for users, where we see maximum sort of research or shopping happening on mobile. And since users are spending so much time on the mobile shopping side, uh, the time spent by users on mobile shopping, early mornings and early evenings, is actually the prime moments for shopping. And that's the time when the majority of time spent is on, majority of m-commerce time is being spent. Lastly, coming to how mobile advertising affects these mobile shopping moments, it is not just upstream awareness, but all parts of the funnel, from creating a favorable opinion about the product, to it going into the consideration set of the user, to the actual sale. And the possibility to do that exists because of multiple touch points with the user when it comes to their mobile shopping journeys. So we'll switch to the next poll now. I think the question should be up on your screens. And like earlier, if you could just answer that using the tool on your screens. Great. So we have the results on the screen, and as you can see here, yeah, we have a good mix across sectors, and we seem to have a lot of people from especially the tech, telecom, consumer durable space. So great. So hopefully, as we talk, go into the next section. you will find some of these data points interesting. So now going into, so we talked a lot about the smartphone user trend, how mobile is impacting our lives, and what are some of the big themes emerging on mobile for next year. If we go specifically into the mobile advertising industry, right, how is that shaping up? So if you see, the Indian advertising industry has been growing at an average of about 11 to 12% in the last couple of years, which is a steady growth rate. But the interesting part here is, if you look at the chart on the right, where digital actually is expected to capture almost 24% of the total share, and has actually grown from a 12% share in just the last 5 years. So digital is actually growing at almost 3x vis-a-vis the traditional media growth rate of 11 to 12%. So almost in the range of 30-35% or so. And out of that, mobile is taking a significant share. What we expect is that 2018 was the year where mobile should have crossed more than 50% of digital ad spends already, across all channels. Within the digital ecosystem, if you look at the various channels, right, spends in the ecosystem are distributed across search, across video, across display. These are some of the traditional ones that exist. And what we anticipate is that in the next couple of years, video and even display will continue to gain traction, and especially from a video lens, right? Because if you see, video started at about 18% or so in 2016, going up to almost 22% of the share in 2020. So video will gain when it comes to share of digital ad spends. The sectors where we expect a much faster digital adoption are some of the ones that you see in the right? So sectors like e-com, sectors like BFSI, telecom, media, and entertainment will gain much faster when it comes to digital adoption. And one of the underlying reasons for that could be that these are also more mobile first kind of verticals, right? For example, e-com has been built out with digital at its core, and mobile at its core from the start. So some of these verticals are naturally more inclined to being mobile first, which probably makes the digital adoption for them much faster. We'll go into the next section now, which is the mobile marketing challenges in 2019. So, what are some of the challenges that we foresee in 2019? We've articulated, the top five challenges that we see, and what we've tried to do, end of last year, is actually go across multiple industry experts, partners, and marketing leaders, and then try to summarize some of the challenges that we see cutting across various sectors and various partners. The first one is gaining a single customer view, right? And what does this really mean? I think it's a well used phrase and often thought about, but what does this really mean? So as most of you who are working in this space would know, that when customers are interacting with your brand or your product, they're using many channels. It could be online channels, it could be offline channels, and as a marketeer, it becomes extremely important for you to be able to get a single view of the customer, which today is not easy, given that most of the times sales and marketing systems may not talk to each other. The technology or the data stack to connect them does not exist, or is very early stage. And the kind of measurement and metrics that you're using across different ecosystems is different. So gaining a single view of the customer becomes a big challenge when it comes to marketing. And what we think marketers can do in the coming years is starting to connect the entire marketing stack across, and investing in the right technology that actually helps them acquire and integrate their customer data across the many touch points, right? And we will talk a little bit about this in the last section on how you could possibly do that. The second big challenge that we see is around data privacy and trust. We last year was a year when you would have heard of GDPR coming in Europe, right, which was the General Data Protection Regulation. There was the California Consumer Privacy Act in the US. And even India had the Sri Krishna Committee report on data protection, which came out. And all of this is all talking about one thing, which is consumer data privacy. And how do you regulate that? How do you make it more transparent for end consumers? How do you ensure that consumer data is being used in the right way and for the right reasons? So data privacy and trust has become a very, very big deal and a challenge which marketeers have to be prepared for. Again, some of the things that we think, based on our discussions with different marketers, what could possibly help is investing in data specialists or scientists to help you actually comply with privacy regulations. And this is not just building systems, but also understanding what these different regulations mean. So there is a legal angle and legal understanding of this as well, which is needed. Also understanding what are your end consumers data privacy comfort levels, right? Things like an opt-in or an opt-out mechanism when you are using different data points from your consumers. Also reducing vulnerability to data breaches. I think we've heard a lot of issues and challenges again on this last year, and this becomes extremely important to build that trust with the end consumer. And also being upfront and transparent about your data collection policies when it comes to your TNCs and so on, really communicating any changes in those policies and so on to your end consumers. Because this is one area which will continue to be very, very important and critical for the coming years. The third one is ad fraud. I think all of us at some point in the last 1.5, 2 years would have heard of this term or this theme. One of the reasons is also that India is actually a market which faces one of the highest ad fraud rates across the globe. If I were to give you a statistic, the fraudulent click rate stands at 32% for India compared to the global average of 15%. So the ad fraud rates are really high in India, and there are a lot of things which, again, marketeers and partners have started doing, whether it is things like IP blacklisting or publisher blocking and so on. But I think there is more that we need to do on this, because ad fraud is also an area which continues to evolve and become more and more difficult to track, because as the systems to guard against it develop, the fraud also develops at the same pace. So this is definitely a challenging area. And some of the things which we have try to invest on our side, right, and we also recommend to our partners is, for example, we are doing a lot of work using our AI and ML engines to actually drive ad fraud prevention, right, which is building things like pattern recognition and heuristics around fraud, and figuring out how to block it in advance vis-a-vis once it's already happened post facto. Also things like integrating your first party data with a certain advertising partners that you trust, so that there can be a comparison of what is a true behavior versus a fraud behavior, can happen in a better way. So these are some of the things that can be done to really look at preventing or controlling ad fraud. The fourth challenge is around attribution, and I think this is an area which again has been well understood in the app world, because there are attribution models and there are third party partners who've really developed and invested in this space. So things around click through attribution, view through attribution are well understood in the in-app world. But I think being able to build a thorough understanding of attribution models across the app and the mobile web world, and you're not just looking at click through and view through attribution, but increasingly also multi touch attribution is important, because a consumer could have interacted with your brand at many, many touch points, right? Even on the app and mobile web world today, And the attribution models today constrain you to the last click or the last view when it comes to attribution. So it becomes important to be able to look at the evolving attribution models to really be able to give the right credit for a consumer action to the right channel. And looking at third party partners who help you with the right again attribution models and tools is a critical one when thinking about attribution. The last, challenge that we have at least summarized or articulated here is around measuring business impact, and this is something that we hear often from our partners and clients that it becomes difficult to really, say that how do I quantify the end ROI for my business, or how it impacted my sales, or how it impacted my bottom line. So I think measuring business impact is a big challenge faced by marketeers today, and that we continue to see it as being a critical point where marketers will need to think through and invest. Um, Here what becomes important is some of the things we talked around, around building a 360-degree customer view and so on, but couple of things which as marketers you can look at. The first is acquiring the right customer data, right? And this requires you to have the technology stack and the infrastructure in place to really be able to capture all your customer touch points and engagements and the data around that, because just having that data is the first step towards being able to measure and quantify business impact. uh, Apart from that, establishing consistent metrics of measurement, because this is something that often is different for different channels. So it could be different for TV, for print, for outdoor, for digital, as to what was the ROI or impact of the marketing channel. And these siloed efforts on tracking and measurement often lead to a very sort of fragmented view of ROI. So being able to ensure consistent metrics when it comes to your marketing ROI again is a very important one. And then lastly, building an integrated system to really link your entire sales and marketing systems and data across those two becomes very, very critical, because that's then the only way to say what was the final ROI when it comes to your marketing impact on your sales or business. So I think these are some of the things that we had at least captured in terms of the 2019 challenges to look out for. I think you'll see another poll on your screen, which is what trend do you think will peak in 2019? So we would love to hear your answers on that. So we have the results here, and these are actually the five trends that we are about to sort of deep dive into in the last section. So I think a lot of people have said vernacular targeting and messaging, which of course is going to be a big trend. And we even saw in the first section how the regional language speakers are definitely increasing at an enormous pace. And yeah, application of ML and AI again is a really big one, which will impact this space. So let's talk about the five mobile marketing trends to look out for India in this section, and we will also walk you through a few examples for each of these trends. So the first one, and this is linked to one of the challenges that we talked about in the last section, which was getting a 360-degree view of the customer, and how do you make this a reality. So I will walk you through a quick example of how we are attempting to do this through the InMobi customer data platform, right? So what this allows you is sort of linking the end-to-end customer journey in your data and technology systems. So think of this as a central data repository sitting at your end. And here the first part of it would be to centralize all your customer data into one place or one system, right? And this is the most difficult part, because your customer data would actually be sitting across many the different systems with different identifiers, some on the basis of device IDs, some on the basis of phone numbers and emails. So being able to centralize all your data into one system and one access point is the critical starting point of this effort. The second is then connecting all your first party data sources into one customer view. So whether it is your sales data, your CRM data, your SMS and push notification related data, really bringing all those data points into one place and connecting them to your centralized data system. The third part, which often is missed out, is being able to then enrich this data, because you know only so much about your customer, which is to the effect of the interactions or touch points that they have had with your brand or your product. So really enriching that data with third party data sources can be very powerful to understand your users better. And after that, then segmenting those users in the right way creates far more value for you, because then you are seeing that user not just in the context of your brand or your product, but also seeing them holistically as to what is that user doing outside your system after you have enriched that user base. And then you can build the right segments, right cohorts, right lookalikes, to really then you start using that audience more effectively. And the last step in the whole thing is then to activate, because once you have centralized the data points, connected it, understood your users better and built the right cohorts, how do you then start using that to grow and activate and acquire and retarget and do all the other marketing actions which actually make you sort of close the loop on this entire 360-degree view of getting a 360-degree view of your customer. The second thing to watch out for will be in-app mobile video. I think we talked a lot about the growing video OTT space in the first section, and how the time spent on mobile video is actually starting to explode and catch up with live TV. So in-app mobile video, when it comes to advertising, will be a very powerful medium to engage your customers, and to also get the right performance and ROI from your in-app mobile video spends. Because what in-app mobile video actually allows you to do is reach users with the right frequency, but also gives you a very brand safe environment to do so. At the same time, an in-app environment also allows things like interactions for the users, which leads to higher engagement times, and then therefore higher either completion rates or better viewability or better performance metrics on your videos. I'll share an example of something that we did for one of our partners through the McDowell's for the McDowell's brand, which was where they leveraged mobile video to actually battle the menace of drunk driving. So this video that you see here was all about responsible drinking. So the first thing that we did here was actually targeting, where we targeted users who are young working professionals, millennials, work in business and tech parks. So there was a big targeting element involved here. The second part that we did was around the creative solution, or the video innovation. So we actually created two sets of videos for them, which one was what happens when you opt for responsible drinking, and the second was what happens when you don't follow responsible drinking habits. And so these videos allowed users to actually interact and opt into one of the options, giving it far higher engagement, because users were actually very sort of curious to understand what happens with either of the two options. And the results that we saw were absolutely phenomenal in this, because we actually were able to reach almost 4 million unique users with this, with almost 300,000 clicks. So this was able to combine the power of in-app video through targeting, through using interactive videos, and seeing the high ROI and performance when it came to the results. The third trend, which again links back to our first section of the growth in non-regional users, is the targeted messaging in vernacular languages, which will become a critical requirement when it comes to mobile marketing. Here again, it would be good to share an example with you, which is something that we did with one of our partners last year on the Wink Music app, where we were helping to build awareness around the number one Yari Jam, again of Diageo as a partner. And here we, were able to integrate the different vernacular, versions of this number one Yari Jam, from Hindi to Punjabi to the Rajasthani and the Kannada versions, uh, organically into the app, so almost as a native placement, and then users could download it depending on their language preference and their vernacular preference. And again, the results that we saw here were very, very interesting. Almost 2.1 million streams in just 10 days, with 300,000 songs downloaded across different languages. And you see the split here, interestingly, that the completions of the downloads were pretty much equal across these four or five languages, Rajasthani actually being the highest one when it came to completions. So really a huge appetite for vernacular messaging and targeting, and that's really starting to grow. The fourth trend is, one which I believe was seeded last year and continues to grow, is on the programmatic awareness among marketeers. The programmatic ad spend market, if you see, has grown almost 3x in just 2 years, which is from 100 million, 120 million to almost 370 million, in 2018. So it's a very fast growing market. And some of the things, again, on the programmatic side, to give you an example of what is required to actually get mobile programmatic right. I'll share an example here. This is an example of actually mobile video programmatic, and some of the things which we see which work really well in a programmatic environment is one, having SDK in in-app inventory, because what this allows you to do is get far higher quality inventory and control over the ad experience, and also the transparency of the segments and the end apps that you get is far higher quality. The second is the brand safety compliance, because the programmatic marketplace environment also gives you transparency into the end apps or sites that you're running on. The brand safety compliance piece is higher. And lastly, also because you can choose the kind of audience targeting that you want to do, whether it is app category based or whether it is location or audience based. That also gives a far higher sense of control and even performance. And what we saw here for this FMCG brand was almost 20 million video views in a matter of a few days, with almost a 1.5x the higher video completion rates compared to their average. And we also measure viewability as a key parameter, which was almost 100% on the active view measurement. So getting mobile programmatic right requires a mix of many of these components, and that is what is showcased here in the results. The last one, which we will talk about, is the adoption of AI and ML, and how this will accelerate in the coming year. AI and ML, of course, is a buzzword which has been used many many times, but it's something which really becomes powerful in its application and use cases. In the context of mobile advertising, these are just three or four areas that we have listed where we see a very powerful use case for AI, whether it is prediction and targeting, because it allows you to segment and target users not just based on their past behavior, but also be able to predict a user's propensity to either engage or click or consume a certain kind of ad or content. So being able to um, design AI algorithms and models around that is a very powerful use case when it comes to prediction and targeting. The other big element is the creative. I think we oftentimes don't understand, what is not visible to the human eye or understood by the human eye can be understood by machine. And so when it comes to creative A/B testing and optimization, again, AI and ML can, play a big role. The third one is brand safety, because again, AIML actually allows you to understand the context, in the site or of the content in the app, and be able to confirm whether it is brand safe or unsafe. And similarly, on the campaign management side, where it plays a very powerful role again in optimizing bids, in price prediction, in finding the right bid landscapes and so on. So there are many use cases of ML and AI when it comes to mobile advertising, which we believe will make this a very powerful trying to look out for next year. So with that, we have come to the end of the webinar. I will hand it over to Rajesh to help sum it up.
Thanks a lot, Vasta. And we'll now open the floor for questions. Guys, please feel free to drop in the questions through the questions window that you see on your screen. Vasta will pick each one of them up and try and answer as many as possible in the next 10 minutes that we have. So Saurabh Jain wants to know that the data consumption for Indian users, which is mentioned, which will reach 18 GB in 2025, is this per week per user or per month per user?
This is a per week. I think this is a per week per user kind of a number. Yeah, it's a per week per user. I think there's a question on using, InMobi for monetization. So what I suggest is if you can drop us a note, offline, then we can revert to you with the, answers specifically on the monetization side. So I think there's a question on, how to make uh, network campaigns more effective beyond impressions and clicks. So I think one of the a couple of metrics which I talked about in some of the use cases as well, right, is that uh, we have seen many examples of how do you start looking at things beyond clicks, right? So when it comes to videos, examples around completion rates or viewability, right? Even we sort of work and support a lot of third party partners that we work with from a measurement lens. When it comes to the traditional display campaign, starting to look at things around unique user reach. So there are a lot of different measurement sort of metrics that at least we see which partners are keen to measure beyond impressions and clicks. So depending on the objective of your campaign, you could structure that metric upfront accordingly, and if you let the partner know, I'm sure they will be able to optimize around that. There's a question on how effective is programmatic for vernacular content and audience reach. I think programmatic actually offers you many benefits on this front, because you can actually target different audience segments, and in fact that's one of the biggest advantages, I would say, because it gives you visibility into different audience segments that you can use for your PMPs or private marketplace deals. So, Open Exchange may not offer you a lot of targeting or vernacular targeting options, but if you were to opt for the PMP route or the programmatic marketplace route, then there are many options available on audience and vernacular targeting. There's a question around, among voice, video, vernacular, which is going to be the biggest trend. I think that's hard to say. I think we're already seeing video be a big trend, and I think that'll continue at least for the next 2 or 3 years. Voice in India, honestly, is picking up, and I think it'll be a function of how quickly that technology gets adopted. But definitely, video and vernacular are already, very fast growing trends. I think someone has a question on how AI can be used especially on the creative side. That's actually a full maybe session on its own. So what we can do is that, we will flash the email ID again, once again, and you could just drop us a note and we will actually send you some content specifically on how AI can be used in the creative part of things. There is a question on, video completion rates, that, are video completion rates actually increasing, or has it already improved? And I think this is with respect to the 6-second video. So I do want to make a distinction here, is that, the longer the video lengths and the completion rates are, sort of two separate metrics. Video length is something obviously that comes from the creative agency or the advertiser, and oftentimes, partners who are running that may not have too much control over the video length. But definitely, given, mobile is a medium which is not going to support long video lengths, the completion rates typically will be lower for, video lengths which are 15 seconds or higher. At least that is what we have observed on our platform. So therefore, mobile ad video lengths need to be optimized in such a way that you can aim for high completion rates. So I think we'll once again just flash um, the email ID to which you can send some of the questions which, if you want more detailed answers on, mobilemarketing@inmobi.com.
Thanks, guys. With this, we come to an end of the presentation. Thank you for being a very attentive and engaged audience with all your questions and queries. We will be sharing the slides and recording as well with you in case you would like to revisit any of the above details. I'll repeat, we'll be definitely sharing the slides and recordings as well with you by next week. And with this, we will also make sure that when we launch the entire report, which is the changing face of the Indian mobile user, we will send across an exclusive copy to you guys. So until the next webinar, it's goodbye from us. Thanks a lot for joining.